What's going on, guys? Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Much appreciated. You're beautiful. I love you. Subscribe. That would mean a lot to me also. For those of you that already do, aces, man. Hey, also, Tobin and Leroy now stream it live on YouTube. Go check us out live every single day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Still put the clips up there as well for you to get on bite size. But check us on out, man. Much appreciated. That would be great. So let's get to this. So Miami Heat. Trade fodder. It is trade season, and we are waiting to see what moves is the Godfather going to make. What is Pat Riley going to do? I think that this is a roster that we've seen now for more than half the season. I'm taping this, by the way, recording this before I'm boots on the ground tonight in Boston. I'll have a game recap for that. So we'll see what's going on. But Boston isn't playing Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Marcus Smart. So take that into consideration as well. With the night they did get blown out by the Magic the night before, but interesting trade deadline coming up because I would like to know where the Heat find themselves and where they think of themselves going into this trade deadline. You know, they have been really taking a pretty even-keeled public voice on this whole season with all the injuries that they've had, with, you know, the up and down play, how long it took for them to get over 500. If they win tonight, they'll be 5-0 for the first time this season. You know, with not crazy gaps to move their way up in the Eastern Conference, but it certainly, I get all the fans' concerns. This has been a team that I think their flaws are very obvious, and they don't really have to do with their two best players, Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. But they do, you know, some of the things that concerned people coming into the season have come to fruition. One of them being the size issue, the power forward issue, and the other one is the shooting, which I think probably caught people as a surprise. And, you know, you're sitting here and you're wondering, well, what are the moves out there? What is going to be done? Where can they go? And, you know, I see all of the names that are kind of thrown out there, especially in the power forward market, anywhere from the return of Kelly Olynyk to Vanderbilt to Bojan Bogdanovic, you know, which, you know, can almost solve a couple of issues there for you in one. And I don't think it's crazy that we're at a point where the Heat are going to make some moves to upgrade the roster. They probably look at what they did this offseason, and they had basically made the bet that Victor Oladipo was going to have a big-time impact on them. I think that's come to fruition. I do think that Vic has been a welcome help to this team, but I also do think that it's opened up a big question, and that is, what is the future of their starting point guard and Kyle Lowry, who played a ton of minutes for them early on in the season and, you know, has just seen his scoring dip. We saw a great performance against the New Orleans Pelicans, which was really a welcome sight to see him take over some stretch of a fourth quarter. It feels like it's ages since we've seen that. Hadn't scored over 15 since Christmas. But I think that the emergence of Victor Oladipo has opened up some interesting questions, because I think that if you look at this Heat team, and I'm basing this off what we've seen from Vic, how good he is defensively, what he is from a playmaking standpoint, the chemistry that he has had with Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, I feel like that he has fit into that spot almost seamlessly. And if you think about a closing lineup for this Heat team, it's going to have Bam, it's going to have Jimmy, obviously. You feel like it's going to have Tyler Hero. And then I feel like Victor Oladipo has turned into that fourth guy who you're obviously going to rely upon. And so you're looking at it and say, well, who are we going to close with? Are they going to close games with Kyle Lowry? This last game they did. And that was a smaller version of a Pelicans team that wasn't at full strength. But is that going to be what you're going to be doing in the playoffs? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's something that you can trust or if that's something that they trust. It's an interesting question. And so what we're starting to see now is a lot of other teams that do have a need for a more established point guard, a veteran point guard. You're starting to see Kyle Lowry show up in a lot of rumors. Now, one of them that was very popular early on in the year was Kyle Lowry for D'Angelo Russell. That was one that was crammed down our throats, what seemed like for 2 straight weeks. Kyle Lowry for D'Angelo Russell. Kyle Lowry for D'Angelo Russell. Heat, Wolves, making a deal. And then it turned out that they weren't interested in that trade. That seemed to kind of die a quick death. Now the new one is, and this has been reported in multiple places, is that the Clippers are reportedly interested in Kyle Lowry. That was reported by The Ringer, and there was one other report that had it that said Kevin O'Connor had said that they are interested in Fred VanVleet, and Kyle Lowry. And then there was another report that had also said that Kyle Lowry was getting some interest from the Timberwolves and from the Los Angeles Clippers. That was from Matt Moore from the Action Network, who has covered the NBA for a while. So, same teams that would be interested in Kyle. The Clippers one is interesting because they do have 2 stars. It's a little bit more, it makes a little bit more sense to me than the Minnesota Timberwolves deal, because you have Kawhi Leonard, you have Paul George. They also clearly have some need of a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a shakeup. A lot of people, they were kind of everybody's sneaky, sexy pick to win the title this year. But to add somebody like Kyle to them, I think would make a lot of sense. And then you look at what they have as far as front court help would be concerned, it feels like it could be a match made in heaven for both teams, because with the Heat, it just feels like the Kyle Lowry thing, they tried. It was a big swing by Miami to go get a guy who was very close to Jimmy Butler, and they were looking for that upgrade, who could take a little relief, who could play make for Bam. I got the thought of getting Kyle Lowry, but if the Heat are at this point right now where they're looking around and they're saying, I don't, Spo's wondering, is this the right fit? Is this going to make sense? I don't know. I don't know. He's always just had such respect for Kyle, and Kyle's had the same respect for him. I don't think that this does head towards a breakup. I don't think it's going to be a hostile one. I think the Heat have honestly handled Kyle pretty well, especially with all the stuff that he was dealing with last year, and nothing really leaked on that at all. And everybody, has been pretty good about all of that personal stuff that Kyle had to deal with. He had to deal with a lot of stuff last year, between that, new team, new country, getting used to new teammates, dealing with those new star teammates being out, having to kind of take over that captaincy, and then in the end getting hurt. It was an unfortunate scenario. This year, it just feels more so of a case of not like he's just disappointing in his numbers and his play, but it also just feels like, man, it's just such a backseat. That impact that he had last year, were like, oh, the Kyle chaos, and you kind of could feel things and how they were trying to play with him on the court as opposed to him not on the court. I don't know if you feel that this year. It doesn't feel like that you do. So this trade is interesting in that, like, if you get a Marcus Morris, and it'd have to be, you'd have to do something else to match salaries. But if you could get somebody like that to your team, you fix that 4 spot. The Morris twins both obviously know the organization well from the fact that Markieff was here last year. They both worked out in the facility last year in the summer. The Morris twins both know Bam Adebayo really well. They've been working out with him for a very long time. So there's a tie and a connection there. And I think that, it doesn't really hinder the Heat. I think that they know what they can do with life without Kyle. And I think that it fills a void of size that they really need to add, that they have lost since PJ Tucker. I don't think Caleb Martin's played poorly this season at all. In fact, I think he's played well. I just think that he's better fit, being that spark plug off the bench than he is being the 4 next to Bam Adebayo. Yeah, he'll have his nights where he's hot shooting and can look electric and you don't really notice it as much. But certainly I think that this would help some elements of that if it does come to fruition. And it is interesting because, locally, Barry Jackson has been reporting that the Heat aren't actively trying to trade Kyle Lowry, that they really don't have a big interest in breaking up the roster. I don't really know where that comes from. Barry's had a couple of interesting reports on Kyle from the jump, where when it was, the Kyrie Irving stuff was happening in the offseason, he had said that Kyle Lowry had been assured he wasn't going to get traded for Kyle Lowry. So obviously Barry has something there with a tie to Lowry that has been told time and time again that, hey, we like what you're doing. We like what you mean to the team. So this definitely could just be other teams just rummaging around, drumming up interest. This could be teams that are trying to get Fred VanVleet and saying, well, we're also interested in Kyle. So how are we going to – it is a big game. There's a ton of rumors out there. I just – and this is not one where it says the Heat are interested in trading for Kyle Lowry. This is particularly interesting for me because this is another team saying they are interested, reportedly, in Kyle Lowry. And – I think a lot of people would look at his age and look at his salary for this year and next year and wonder, well, what is the market going to be? And I really don't feel like there's been a shortage of rumors on him. That there have been plenty of people who have looked at Kyle, looked at maybe the fit with Miami and said, that hasn't felt, even, some of the ideas of like him returning to Toronto, that's almost got like a Cavaliers D Wade back to the Heat trade vibes to it, where, man, you see the way that Kyle perks up around Toronto, in Toronto, having a homecoming there, and the Heat maybe getting some kind of a more immediate fit piece there. Maybe that's the perfect trade. Because it's always just kind of felt like with Kyle, he's such a pro's pro. He does his work. He, doesn't make a stink. He, obviously has a great relationship with the star player of the team. He has been great in mentoring. Gabe Vincent, Tyler Hero has been very important in all of that stuff. This has not been like a tumultuous relationship with Kyle Lowry at all. The dude is, classy and professional and handles all that stuff. I just don't think it's been like the perfect fit. And sometimes it's hard. Like, you're this icon of a player and you leave beloved, but you just kind of feel like time's out. I'm going to go try and join a team that's close to contending. And you weren't really part of the postseason contending last year. He was a big part of the regular season, but he wasn't in the postseason. And now this year it kind of feels like you're middling, and it doesn't ever feel like Kyle's a difference maker. And I don't know if that's just a case of his age. I don't know if that's a case of how the style is, or, maybe it's just not a good fit. And maybe it is just best that both sides go and part ways and go in a different direction. But I will say, if you can get more of what they did in that last game against the Pelicans, and you could get that version of Kyle Lowry to certainly not take over, not need the ball to take over all the time, but just in spots when he feels like he has a matchup that he wants, that he could take over, feel like it would go a long way, to see more of that. And certainly, as I said, I'm recording this game before the Celtics game. Maybe we see some of that tonight. There's no Marcus Smart, so that's a busy night for the referees if Marcus Smart and Kyle Lowry are playing on the same floor. But if we see more of a version that we saw on Sunday afternoon, then, maybe that stuff about them not being too eager to trade him is true. And they do feel like he's going to add something of value. He is a champion. He is a guy who has gone the distance and has been through those runs up and down, and has talked about, that he saves himself for a certain point of the series before he starts cranking it back up. So maybe this is that time. I don't know. But it is interesting that there is a ton of Kyle Lowry smoke, and really feels like there has been for the last month.